Nice to see you and to be seen by you. I'm Patrick Brown. I use he and they pronouns. And yeah, very excited to be with everyone tonight. I am coming to you from the unceded land of the Ohlone, aka Oakland. Also, it's hot here. Is anybody else hot? I'm grateful for it, but it's hot here. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about, the amazing magic of queer folks and how we create our own communities, families, and Kalyana Mita, or spiritual friends. Tapping into our magic, identifying it, talking about it. And we've got some good colleagues with us to talk about it. I've got Larry Yang's book called Awakening Together and Kate Johnson's book called Radical Friendship. So I'll be referencing those. I said my name is Patrick. I come from the South Side of Chicago, and I burned out of a nonprofit job 12 or 13 years ago. The conditions under which I found and deepened my practice in the Dharma were around suffering. It's very successful, very focused, very into the was very into the ways in which we present success. And yet at the time, my mother was kept inviting me, well, what about your spiritual practice? What about the largers? I'm just trying to be successful here. And I really wore myself too thin and I broke. It was very painful. It lasted too long. And I had to leave Chicago. And I came to California and I was like, I'm gonna figure out how to put myself back together. And my practice really was a very strong component of that. It was like the spine. I got to redesign my life and put myself back together, but I used the Dharma, which I had been aware of for years, but never been quite as devoted to. And so I started this program at EBMC, Commit to Dharma, and then I grew and I just was shook on a retreat I went to. My heart broke open and my suffering was exposed. And it was so powerful that I just really will forever be grateful for the teachers that helped me put my life back together using the Dharma. And so I committed myself to expanding the Dharma. I want everybody to have access. Why doesn't everybody know how to do this? And so that's how I ended up kind of on a trajectory to become a teacher. I believe that especially queer communities and Black communities and other marginalized communities need access to these teachings. They have been so transformative in my life to reduce my suffering. That is my commitment. That's why I'm here tonight. And I am a commitment to expanding the Dharma to places where it has not yet had a chance to take root. I love this community, and I've been calling this Sangha home for about 12 years. And I don't think it's to be taken lightly that there is such a resource. It does not exist in many places. By a lot of estimates, and I keep looking for more data, but by a lot of estimates, we are one of the longest running queer sanghas, which means that there are many who have come before us. There are many of us in lots of combinations who show up tonight and regularly and when we can, and there are many that will come behind us. And so for this reason, I am deeply embedded and committed to the work of ending the suffering of all beings through the Dharma. And EBMC is a very specific place where that can happen. I have felt so connected in affinity with queer folks. I have many queer friends through the Sangha. I see some of you on here tonight. Hello. I have created queer impact through these Sanghas. And so a lot of what I'm talking about tonight will be queer Kalyana Mita, or spiritual friendships on the friends on the journey together. But I just want to point to your ability to contribute what you can, how you can, into this amazing, powerful lineage that you're a part of with Alphabet Sangha at EBMC is really quite phenomenal. And I think we gloss over it. So I just want to say, how many of us are there? There's 45 of us or something on this call right now. This is queer gathering. This is queer support. This is queer community making. And I'm so grateful for this space. And so for that reason, I give regularly to EBMC, and I hope that you will stretch yourself into the practice of dana, because there really is a gift in giving. And so I want to start by just asking, like, why do you practice? Some people that know me are like, here we go again. No, but like, why do you practice? Why did you show up tonight? You have a lot of places to be, a lot of things you could be doing. What is the intention behind cultivating a practice around mindfulness and the Dharma? I'll name just a few that I know are in the room. Many of us, as I pointed to myself, came through the doorway of suffering. All beings will know suffering is the first noble truth, right? It's ubiquitous. Everybody suffers. All beings suffer. And when that suffering is a catalyst in many ways to move us to stop the suffering, we look for places to end our suffering. And one of the places I landed was in the Dharma. And so many of us come through the door of suffering because we want to reduce the amount of suffering in our lives. We want to engage in a practice. This one even has a path, right? The first noble truth is that there is suffering. The second is that there is a source of the suffering. There's an end to the suffering. There's a way to end it. And then there's this eightfold path, this like mindful way to achieve this end of suffering. So other people come in because of joy, so exalted by the uniqueness of being alive. People want to increase the depth of their understanding of the world, right? What are the contemplative practices that allow me to stand in the face of a beautiful flower, or to listen to the laughter of children, or to live my best queer life, right? Some people come to the practice through exaltation, exalting of the uniqueness of being alive. And then there are folks who kind of stumble into the practice. Oh, I was working with a therapist who suggested that I find a way to bring my attention into focus, and these skills of concentration, forgiveness, generosity, these practices are wholesome, and they help to generate ways that I can show up in community that lead to a more easeful life. So I just posed the question to you, not to answer aloud, but to consider, what is the intention behind your practice? Because whether it was the doorway of suffering or of joy, what I do know is that there are three prime practices in the refuges we take in the Dharma. First, we take refuge in the Buddha, and that's just not the person who we see, who we've learned about and studied his words and teachings. The person of the Buddha is not who we take refuge in. We take refuge in the Buddha nature within all of us. That each of us have the seeds within us and the conditions to create forgiveness, compassion, and to deepen our mindfulness practices to become closer to this version of ourselves that is very Buddha-like, right? The nature of the Buddha is very kind and generous. And so we endeavor to practice so we may be more like lift up that nature within ourselves. The second refuge is within the Dharma, right? The teachings of the Buddha, the practices. One of my favorites is the second arrow, right? There are all these practices that allow us to depthfully explore our own mindful creations, right? This practice of the second arrow, knowing that there is suffering, which would be like being hit with an arrow, and then there is suffering that leads to more suffering. So if I were to be hit by an arrow, oh, that's the suffering, and then why me? Why did I get hit by an arrow, right? The conditions we create that maybe continue and expand our suffering as opposed to ending it. Oh, suffering, I get hit by an arrow, that's terrible. So I ask you to consider what some of your teachings that have been resonant for you are. I love to think about and share some of the Dharma practices and teachings that are valuable to me with my friends, with my partner, with people. I think about like which ones are most curious to explore, to talk about. And then the last refuge is the Dharma of Sangha, right? The interconnectedness of all beings, the the truth that there are certain things we can only learn in relationship that we don't learn by ourselves. I have been a deep practitioner of the Sangha practice since my beginning at EBMC. I have been through the ringer, through the program committee, the L Sangha leadership, the volunteer for the Alphabet, volunteer for POC. I have been in lots of Sanghas at EBMC and learned so much through the practice. Not all pleasant by any stretch, but there's a deep learning in Sangha and in community. And that's really what I want to land on and talk about. How do you create community? Tonight, we are lovingly surrounded with each other around queer community. You know, there's a way that queer folks, in my experience, create our own communities. My coming out story isn't terrible. You know, it's got some peaks and valleys, but I know that as I move through the world as a queer man, I had the opportunity to build chosen family, right? There are places in my family that I wasn't seen or appreciated or even welcomed. And I, in an effort to sustain myself, really made an effort to build my own queer community. And so I think that that's a gift that a lot of us have. We have this queer magic of wanting to support, wanting to lean into each other, wanting to build community where maybe we haven't always been met, our needs haven't always been met. And so how do we do this? We do this through practices. You know, I spent a lot of my years in the gay bars and building connection one-on-one, or being a friend of a friend and building community this way. I, you know, am of the generation that had, you know, internet, right? Chat groups, bulletin boards, or Black, as they used to be called, right? Like, so in this virtual world of the pandemic, how we're all in Zoom, like there's accessibility through technology. You can build community this way. Also has some advantages and also some challenges. But whatever way we find to do that, our queer communities are magical. We recognize each other. We can see each other. We have shared experiences with each other. And the depth of that is quite significant. So when I think about the Dharma, the Sangha, I think about the way that we choose to see each other and we move together. This term that I keep throwing around, Kalyana Mita, spiritual friends on the journey, is really important, right? So what are the aspects of community and friendship that are supportive of your life that you want to live? In places where I was not seen or was not valued, it was my queer community that allowed me to see my value and my worth. There were places that turned away from, you know, friends that turned away from me as I, you know, became more queer. The places that accepted me were healing. That there's a special queer magic that I found, you know, in company of all my queer siblings, that I was seen and heard and valued and safe in a way that I wasn't in other places. And so I just point to this because those are characteristics that I find in Sangha. This practice of identifying folks, who's on the journey with you? Who is the person you share your practice with? Given all the work that many of us do to find our identity, who are the folks that you engage with that are supportive of your queer identity and your practice? Like, is there an intersection? So I'm going to ask you just to humor me for a moment and maybe just do a quick visualization. So if you'll find a posture that feels comfortable and alert, maybe have a nice deep breath in and out. Don't allow your eyes to close or lower your gaze if it feels good. We're just going to spend a few minutes doing a quick visualization. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to think of a person or persons that you believe have invested in your practice. Your mindfulness practice, your Dharma Buddhist practice, your prayer practice, whatever you define as like a way that you really lean into the Dharma. So you can start thinking about people that have invested in you. Maybe you consider them a benefactor or a dear friend or a family member. Just take a moment to identify that person and pull them to your mind's eye. If it's a group of people, you can think of them in a group. Imagine them laughing. Imagine them embracing you, supporting you. Imagine them showing up in the difficult times. And then I want you to imagine that you are able to see through their eyes. You're able to see, excuse me, through their eyes, you're able to see yourself. So have a nice deep breath in and out. Just imagine that you can see yourself through the eyes of those in your community. Deep appreciation. Again, maybe laughter. I'm going to ask you to clear your mind. I want you to think again of a space or a people, a group that really hold you in your practice, right? For whatever reason you endeavor to practice, like who can support that? Whose work, whose life, whose words of affirmation really lift you up? Who do you want to tell that you were in practice tonight at Sangha? Who do you want to connect with around deepening your practice? Allow your mind to kind of comb through people that have supported you throughout the years and just land on one or two, allowing them to come into your mind's eye. Again, imagining them laughing with you together. Again, imagining them holding you in difficult times, holding each other. And I'm going to invite us just to come back to this space and open your eyes as it feels good. I offer this visualization to ground us in the experience of being seen and held. What is more important in our good times and difficult times than having space to be held and hold each other? So the path, your friends on the journey with you are the people who endeavor to support the creation that you want, right? It's not for a particular, they don't want you to be a particular way. They want you to be the best way you choose to be. And so how we find community in our queer groups and communities is to point towards these practices. When I asked you to think of who supports you in your queerness and who supports you in your practice, these are the folks on the journey. And if you had trouble naming people, that's normal, that's fine. But maybe put our heads towards, this is a group that is aligned. We all practice for a reason. There's shared understanding, shared identity here. We may draw from this community to build together. But first, just a few readings. So this is from Kate Johnson's book, Radical Friendship. She says, this is from the Metta Sutta. Monks and friends endowed with 7 qualities are worth associating with. They give what is hard to give. They do what is hard to do. They endure what is hard to endure. They reveal their secrets to you. They keep your secrets. When misfortune strikes, they don't abandon you. When you're down and out, they don't look down on you. A friend endowed with these 7 qualities is worth associating with. Again, it's a passage from the Buddhist teachings called Aggarata Nikaya. Another reading from the same book. Friendship is a kind of power that, unlike allyship, does not rely on existing systems of privilege. In this world that qualifies friendship as both spiritual practice and superpower, the essential difference is this: to become an ally is to take on an identity. To become a friend is to commit to a path of practice. Friendship is not an identity, it is an activity. Friends feed each other, check in on each other, cheer each other up, and let each other be. We help when help is needed and wanted. We do our very best to protect each other from harm. We support each other in accountability. When we fail to live up to our values and agreements, we begin again. I think just wonderful thoughtfulness around kind of what is a friend and how might we be together in community together. This next two readings are from Awakening Together, which is the Larry Yang book. Highly recommend. Larry says, this is more about the individual connections towards a community, towards a collective. The etymology of the word community is from the Latin term cum, meaning together or among each other, and munus, which indicates giving or a gift of exchange. Integrated in one word, community represents a form of exchanging or giving among and between each other. It suggests the development of relationship and the act of relating with each other. Since the act of relating, there is so much exchange and sharing. The source resonates with the Buddhist concept of the practice of Sangha, giving to each other, whether in the form of support in getting one's robes right, or in the form of offering food. It is a visible and visceral way of participating in community off the page as a concept and into the life of a relational reality. Right? This contemplation of this connection, this Sangha, these friendships are beyond just the theoretical. They show up in practice and in behaviors. And then lastly, I'll point to, here it is. This is more about the conditions from the individual to the collective. You may think you are meditating with the purpose of attaining peace in your own mind and tenderness in your own heart. You may think that meditation practice is about creating a deep awareness and mindfulness in your own life so that you can choose what leads to happiness for you rather than what leads to suffering. You may even feel that the benefits when wisdom and insight arise and your mind and your heart grow calm. But there's something else that happens at the same time. By emphasizing the refuge of Sangha, the Buddha was connecting personal practice of mindfulness to a collective form of awareness. I believe he was interested in transforming our collective experience into a higher order of consciousness, not bound by individual experience, but inclusive of the diverse experiences of us all. As practice expands from the personal to the collective, from internal to external, from particular to universal, it comes to embody the value of inclusion of all things, all people, of all differences. All of our experiences are invited to belong. None of us is marginalized or excluded. In this way, we are invited to create beautiful and beloved communities. Those four statements came to me as I was preparing for tonight because I think they point towards what I'm sharing, which is let us be grateful and acknowledge that although difficult, our communities can hold us and we can choose our own communities that see us in our queerness and in our intersectional identities. And I think this is a core practice within the Dharma. So I thank you for listening to my musings.